The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous supporters. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/donate. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode number 85.
I'm a doctor. I've lived for over 2,000 years. I am Scottish. I can complain about things. Shush.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. Today we're discussing the 10th Doctor two-part story, Army of Ghosts and Doomsday, and the end of Rose Tyler. Joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
So here it is. We've made it to the end of another rewatch of a season of New Who, and we're at the first time in New Who that we lose a companion, that the companion departs. This is so another significant event to see how New Who handles it versus Old Who. So that'll be an interesting discussion.
And they fake us out by telling us Rose is going to die,
yes,
which they've been hinting at for a while.
Yeah, it's a very Moffat way of ending this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, as far as I know,
even though this is Russell T Davies,
yeah, it's not. Stephen Moffat did not. There was now just to kind of throw this out there at the beginning. There was an idea. Davies had an idea to do a Rose Tyler spin-off show. I don't know. Did you either know that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Where she would be, Rose Tyler, Defense of the Earth or something like that, where she would defend.
To spoil the end of this, she ends up in another reality where she is apparently going to become a defender of that Earth.
Right.
The Cyberman reality,
yeah.
Where we earlier this season saw the Cyberman.
Yep. And she works for the Torchwood of that reality. And that Davies decided not to do it. He didn't even talk to Billy Piper. He didn't get very far with the idea because he realized it would undercut the emotional impact of this episode or these stories.
If he later undercut it in a different way.
Yes,
exactly.
We'll get to that one. So we have this episode was broadcast July 1st, 2006. It was the end of the second season. It's 2 episodes. And so a couple of things. So the basic plot of this is Rose and the Doctor, they come back from traveling and they discover that everywhere in the world, every day, several times a day, these ghosts are appearing and people believe them to be the ghosts of relatives or loved ones who are coming back to visit. And it's become such a very normal part of everybody's life. And it's a worldwide phenomenon. And they
even know when it's going to happen.
Yes.
There are ghost shifts where the ghost will show up for 2 minutes and in advance that's going to happen. Right,
at a very particular time of day. And then, although if your loved one is supposed to show up in the middle of the night, well, I guess that's your bad luck, where you are. They discover through, and we'll go over some of this stuff, but they discover it's the Cybermen coming through from the alternate reality, the Pete Tyler reality, where Pete Tyler survived, in the world where Mickey stayed behind. And at the same time, the Torchwood Institute is frankly responsible for this happening in some ways. I want to talk about that in a bit, like who's really responsible. But they've also got this void ship that contains the Daleks who survived the Time War, and they're
certain Daleks,
yes. And they get out, and then they go to war for dominance of the Earth, which is it's actually a lot of fun. So the story opens up with a
montage of Rose sitting
yes.
on a train looking kind of sad, giving us some narration about
right.
This is the story of how I died.
Right. But we start with an image of the Earth, which I was kind of curious. How many season finales or Christmas specials start with a voiceover of the Earth, at least in New Who?
A lot.
A lot.
I don't have an exact count, but the very next episode, the Christmas special, The Runaway Bride, starts exactly the same way.
Right.
At least Russell T Davies, I don't remember as many with Moffat, but Russell T Davies obviously really liked this shot.
Yes.
We get a lot of shots of it, even in the Stephen Moffat era, like in, The Big Bang and the Pandorica Opens. We have the same kind of shot.
Right. It's a shot of the Earth and then somebody doing a voiceover, whether it's the Doctor or a companion, or in one case, not Rashomon. What's his name?
Rassilon.
Rassilon. I always get that.
Rashomon is a Japanese movie about viewpoints.
Exactly. So, and then Rose, as we said, right off the bat says, "I died," which is, I feel like that's kind of cheap.
I don't mind it. I thought it was effective, but then she doesn't actually die.
Well, that's the thing that gets me. That's what makes it cheap for me. If she comes in and says, "I die," and then they build that into a story where she dies at the end. Not that I want Rose to die, but if they're going to say it, but to kind of undermine it by not her by well, she died in a way, like
She died legally.
I don't know. That's. Don't say it if it's not going to happen. That's what I kind of say.
Yeah, I did like a number of things about the opening of this, because once we get past that little opening bit, we have the Doctor and Rose showing up at Jackie's apartment, or whatever you call that.
Yeah,
her dwelling,
her flat,
and her and they're doing a whole bunch of little bits of business real fast, and I like the way they do that. Rose has laundry that she needs done.
She's back from college,
and that's realistic. Although I assume they have laundry facilities on the TARDIS.
I was going to say
must.
The TARDIS's laundromat must be out of service.
Yeah. Also, Jackie is like, how much she didn't like Christopher Eccleston as the Doctor, but now she just totally loves David Tennant. You know, and she's just all over David Tennant. And then Rose has this little knickknack that they got on another planet, made out of the metal bezulium, that will let her predict the weather because it changes temperature in anticipation of weather changes. And it's just a nice little throwaway concept.
I have a barometer too.
Yeah,
exactly.
Jackie seems rather unimpressed with the bezulium knickknack, and I thought she was going to say, we do have the Weather Channel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As a tangent, I was telling my kids about the weather stick this morning. It's a stick, and it has a sign that says, "If it's wet, it's raining. If it's white, it's snowing. If it's hot,
it's gone, it's a tornado."
Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of like the bezulium. So how long have the Doctor and Rose been away at this point? Like, do we have a sense of that?
I don't think we really do.
Well, at least 2 months. At least 2 months, because that's how long they said the ghost shifts have been happening.
Yeah, it could well be more than that, but it's at least that long. But obviously not as long as like Amy and Rory would stay away, because they claimed that they had aged like about 10 years in their estimation over the time of their travels with the Doctor.
Right, and that was kind of making it for the fact that it was almost like 10 years with 2 seasons in it that we saw with Amy and Rory in the 11th Doctor. And keeping in mind that because of with the 9th Doctor, they were away for 12 months and Jackie thought Rose was dead. Even though this episode aired in 2006, it's taking place in 2007 because they had jumped things ahead by 12 months. So there's that shift of the calendar a bit, but it doesn't really enter into this story, so it's not really all that important.
We then get into Jackie's announcement that her father, Grandad Prentice, who is a ghost, is going to be showing up in a few minutes, and he does. And then they start watching. I mean, he's a blurred out image.
Right.
Can't really make out any features, but she feels that it's him and thinks that she can detect the odor of the cigarettes he used to smoke. But Rose and the Doctor can't. And the Doctor suggests that this is something that is like a psychic link and that's helping pull the ghosts into this reality. The people's desire to have them be linked with them as their loved ones. They also watch television, and we get a montage of how the ghosts have impacted society. We get a clip from EastEnders.
Yep.
We also get clips from around the world, and I'm going, do they really have this many foreign language channels on London cable television?
Well, by the way, a lot of the people that we see are the presenters are real presenters in British television. The guy from Ghost Watch is a real presenter. The one who's like, I don't think anybody's going to need me anymore, is a real life ghost hunter or medium medium, and I did air quotes. His name's Derek Akora. So I felt like it was the TV spots. They went on too long and they got a little too slapstick, like the ghost forecast and the ghost t-shirt. Like, it's just, I don't know. It was,
the Maury Povich equivalent, Yeah,
it was just a little, I married a ghost. Yeah. I mean, just, it would have been enough to just have some news reports. You know what I mean? It just got a little kind of slapstick.
What I found particularly problematic about it was Jackie's explanation that this just started happening 2 months ago. And at first everybody was screaming and freaked out, but then we realized how lucky we are. And I'm going, 2 months? No.
Yeah.
I would still totally be freaking out. If you came back 2 years later, people might have adapted to this.
Yeah.
Right.
Not 2 months.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have some sort of in-story explanation that they were being psychically sedated or something like that. Yeah. To accept it. It just, it was, that's, we're supposed to, accept it and move on. And I guess
you got to remember, this is a universe though, where there's alien invasions every other month and people forget about it 2 minutes after it happens.
Right. Like the Sycorax over London. Yeah.
Yep.
So, then we get,
Didn't we get Martha Jones?
Martha Jones, or at least the actress.
It's not Martha Jones.
So, Freema Agyeman.
I've never been sure how to say that.
Yeah.
Freema.
Her name is, her character is Adiola. She works for Torchwood. And it's funny, she got this job on the show before she even auditioned for Martha Jones. Like, this was not a stealth introduction. In fact, I think Russell T Davies was saying that if he'd known that he would have her as Martha Jones, he would have had Adiola actually survive this and then kind of come up with some explanation that she's Martha Jones. So,
and they actually decided to explain this. Now, this is, of course, part of the big recurring faces mystery on Doctor Who about why that has led to fan theories about there being only a certain number of faces in the Doctor Who universe, and so they crop up in weird ways. But they actually decided to explain in a novel that came out before the next season. So before we met Martha, that explained this character is Martha's cousin.
Okay. Martha's identical cousin.
All right. It happens.
Well, Patty Duke,
It happens.
Identical cousins all the way.
Well, so apparently, so let's talk. Is Torchwood responsible for the Cybermen coming through?
I would say that's a yes and no. I would say that's a yes and no answer.
Okay.
They're not obviously not responsible for the breach. That was the void ship breaking through.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they aggravated the situation.
Yeah, the way they explain it is ultimately is the Daleks have this void ship, which at first we don't know what it is, but it's totally a Gould teleball from Stargate SG-1.
That's right.
And the Daleks in the Cult of Skaro, a group of 4 select Daleks trained to think like the enemy, so they even have names and personalities and use humor. But the Cult of Skaro escaped the Time War with something called the Genesis Arc, and apparently in the process of traveling through the void between dimensions, they smacked into ours, even though they were from here already. And in the process, they opened a hole of some kind into the Pete Tyler reality where the Cybermen took over. But Torchwood has been very effective on that side in defeating the Cybermen, and so the Cybermen are trying to flee through the hole made by the void ship to our reality. And Torchwood, in its quest to get alien technology, is trying to, not knowing it's the Cybermen, but recognizing it's a powerful energy source, is facilitating that by having these ghost set shifts where they flip these levers at Torchwood headquarters at Canary Wharf, and it lets the ghost temporarily come through, and they're studying how can we control this power source. So it's really all three. It's the Daleks, the Cybermen, and Torchwood that are collectively responsible for what's happening.
Were these
that's where the Doctor did his little thing with the glass in the office where he with the Sonic.
Right. Every time they
spread.
Yeah. Every time they open the breach, it makes it worse. So were these Daleks who escaped the Time War in the alternate dimension?
They seem to be our Daleks from all we know. I mean, exactly? Go ahead.
I thought it explained it where they were Daleks from our dimension, and they went into the void to evade
the Time War.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then we're going to come back.
They were hiding in the void ship until the right time to come back.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Because they obviously thought there were no Time Lords left to stop them. And so this sphere, the void ship, it puts off no radiation. It's present but not. Kind of drives you a little crazy.
Has no mass.
Yeah. And it's in the possession of Torchwood, which where everyone wears conveniently obnoxious Bluetooth headsets, the old 2006 version of the giant earpiece.
Many people do anyway.
Yes, which are well, everyone at Torchwood apparently, well, except for the big boss, but a lot of the people do.
Just remember, if it's alien, it's ours.
Yeah. And so Torchwood. Okay, so let's bring that up. Torchwood, unlike Unit works with the Doctor. The Doctor was part of Unit. Torchwood seems to be another organization like Unit's job is to defend the Earth from space invasion. Torchwood seems to have the similar job set up by Queen Victoria, as we saw in Tooth and Claw 100 years or so ago. But
they're more covert. Unit operates in the open, whereas Torchwood doesn't.
And Torchwood, the Doctor's the enemy. That's
named as such in their charter by Queen Victoria.
Right, which is very interesting.
So again, this is totally Stargate SG-1. Unit is Stargate Command, and Torchwood is the rival covert organization, the
what was
NID,
that?
NID, which stood for no ID, no identification.
And we totally have a gate room.
Yeah.
And the Cybermen are like the Goa'uld, and because they have although the Daleks are kind of like them too. They have they're the creatures with the creature inside. Wow, that is so Stargate. You're right.
Yeah.
So, it just blew my mind, Jimmy.
And the reality cracking pattern. The reality cracking pattern is Fringe. So with an alternate reality on the other side.
That's right.
So once again, Doctor Who ripped off preeminently ripped off from Stargate.
Right. Oh well.
Yep.
Yeah, actually, Stargate had been around by 2006. Stargate was actually well established at this point.
Yeah. Daleks and Cybermen date from
those
the 60s.
Right. But
that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. Of the game room. Yeah. The creatures inside. I mean, heck, that goes back to Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That's an old trope. So we have the poor Adiola and her work colleague Paramore off for an assignation during the middle of the workday, apparently to the approval of her boss, of their bosses.
Well, not approval, but the boss is aware of it.
Yes.
She says, "Oh, they think we haven't noticed."
Yes. This is definitely not 2018. that sort of thing does not happen today anymore. And they get cyberized. They get upgraded in a sense, not put into suits, but sort of stealth cyberization, where they have the earpod thing, where they get a second Bluetooth headset, just like the earpods of Pete Tyler's world.
Right. Only this actually has a cord that goes right into your brain, we later discover, and it's an effective moment of body horror when the boss lady, takes out one of Adiola's earpods, and this, snake-like thing.
Ugh.
A tube comes out of her head, and it's like, ugh.
Yeah, exactly. The doctor says don't pull that out, don't pull it out. Just don't do it.
Don't mess with it.
And then one of the fun things is, when the Cybermen emerge, so the Cybermen are hiding in this area of the Torchwood building where there's renovations going on. So you can't see them behind all the plastic, which is another classic horror movie sort of trope. Yeah. And but when they emerge from it, it reminded me very much of Tomb of the Cybermen that we just watched recently.
Oh yeah, they cut their way through the plastic and emerge from it. It's a deliberate nod to that episode.
Yeah, that was a very effective thing they did there. And so then we have so the Doctor and Jackie and Rose are investigating. Meanwhile, the Cybermen have established, and there is a fun moment where they're singing Ghostbusters. The Doctor and Rose, and of course, anticipating the fans, the Rose asked the question: "Is it the Gelf from all the way back in season 1, The Unquiet Dead?" And the Doctor says no.
Although they had given that the fans knew the title of the episode in advance, there was a lot of speculation that it would be the Gelf. And I think the BBC may have even misled the fans on that point.
Interesting. In order to keep the real story.
The surprise.
Yeah. So there's this moment where Jackie confronts Rose in the TARDIS while they're doing the Doctor's off doing his thing, where she accuses her of changing. And it was an interesting moment.
It sets up the pattern because we see Rose taking on a lot of responsibility. And we've seen that in recent episodes where she's not just a screamer like some of the old companions. She's grown through her travels and is now competent to deal with different situations. And they'll continue to explore this theme in New Who of the companions becoming more and more like the Doctor over time.
Right.
And Jackie is essentially calling Rose out on that right now. She says, "You even look like him," which of course she totally doesn't.
Yeah, it was very strange.
Yeah.
Well, and this is the thing I was kind of saying, is you think it is like, why is Jackie opposed to this? And I suppose, I mean, there may be just this natural impulse, like Rose is growing beyond the council flats, their lower middle class lifestyle, being a shop girl, which is essentially what Jackie has been.
Well, and there's a great moment in the dialogue where, to justify the changes she's undergoing, Rose says to Jackie, "I used to work in shops." And then Jackie comes back with, "I work in shops. What's wrong with that?" Yeah. Yep. And it's a really great human moment. I really like that.
Right. And in fact, I think Jackie, this is like the best Jackie episode finally, at the very end. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's still some denigration of Jackie, some snide stuff about her.
The Doctor totally abuses her verbally.
Yeah. There are instances where she's for the first time. I mean, she's been involved in adventures on the sidelines a few times, but like she's in the middle of it. Her life is in danger. Rose's life is in danger, and she's understandably upset that the Doctor promised to take care of both Rose and her, and he seems to be breaking it at several points.
Yeah, there's also even a period in this first episode where the Doctor reaches into the TARDIS after they're at Torchwood. He reaches into the TARDIS and pulls Jackie out and presents her as his companion, Rose.
Because they assume he has a companion and that it will be a woman, and that he only has one, which was not true necessarily historically in classic.
No, and they don't present it as being certain that it's just going to be one and that it's going to be a woman, but they do know he's going to have a companion. Yeah. And so he presents her as Rose. He says they encountered a time thing that aged her and so forth. But then we get this section in the episode where basically Jackie is functioning as the companion while Rose is holed up in the TARDIS.
Right, exactly. And she holds her own for a bit.
Yeah. I like Jackie in this episode. I think she's really good.
I do like the scene where she's in the TARDIS. The Doctor forgot she was in there, and she's sitting up on that catwalk.
Yeah. Don't you? What is it? Don't fly off with me to some other planet. There's one moment where Vanessa, the head of Torchwood, is explaining Torchwood to the Doctor and Jackie, and she says it was founded for the express purpose of making the British Empire great. And I'm thinking, again? Making the British Empire great again?
And Jackie says there's no empire, and Vanessa says not yet.
Exactly.
Yes, this is a very interesting organization, to say the least.
Vanessa is I really like some of the Russell T Davies dialogue in this. There's a moment where, after Vanessa has said that the Doctor is listed in their charter as an enemy, he says, "Am I a prisoner?" And she's like, "Oh, yes."
Just like,
just so nonchalant about it. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
oh, of course, yeah.
But will make you totally comfortable.
Yes. So then we get this discussion of the Void and in the Void ship.
And this makes no sense.
Right. And the Doctor says the Eternals call the Void the Howling. And I'm kind of curious as who are the Eternals?
The Eternals are a group of very powerful entities who we met back during the Fifth Doctor, Peter Davison's time, where they were basically kind of having outer space yacht races. They're kind of high and above everything and extremely powerful and able to manipulate reality in big ways.
Okay. So they call the Void the Howling. And he says some call it hell, but it's a place where there's no time, no space, no up, no down, no anything.
But you can travel through it. Okay,
well,
travel means going from one space to another over the course of time. So how can there be no time or space in the Void?
Right. Well, and the Doctor says you can't. I mean, he insists several times that you can't travel between worlds, but yet they do.
Exactly.
And they have.
This is a problem, and it spills over into, and I'm wondering if it's even broader than this, but I really started to notice it in this two-parter, and it spills over into The Runaway Bride, which is the Christmas special that follows this, where David Tennant's Doctor keeps saying things are impossible, even though they've just been done.
Right.
And it's like, this is cliched writing just to ramp up the drama.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the 10th Doctor spends a lot of time sort of sputtering at things. I don't know if that's sort of my take on it is he does he kind of gets presented with situations like, what? No, what? I mean,
and that's not a bad thing though, because that we've talked before how Classic Who, the Doctor doesn't always know everything.
Right.
But the tendency in New Who is to make him the all-knowing, all-seeing, all-wise Doctor.
Right. All powerful.
And and that's not a bad thing. I was thinking, instead of saying it's, that's impossible. Well, I thought that was impossible, but apparently not. That would solve it right there.
Yeah.
Well,
it's just a problem on the dialogue level.
Yeah.
Yep.
In fact, I think in this episode, at one point, I'm trying to see in my notes where it says it, but at one point, the Doctor kind of says, he's not confident. He does feel like this is, he's not going to be, the solution. Someone tells him that you're the solution. He's like, am I really? So there's not that arrogant confidence that we later see.
There's also a nice bit after Mickey shows up in this, and Rose says, but the Doctor said you couldn't come back from the other dimension. And Mickey says, well, that's not the only thing he was wrong about.
Right. And so,
Mickey, by the way, is totally competent in this, and I love seeing Mickey again.
Totally different Mickey. This is not the same guy, and this, I mean, it is, but it doesn't feel at all like the same guy that we saw in the first episode in Rose. He's confident. He's strong. He's focused. This is the Mickey I wish we had.
He's still got a little bit of the smart aleck. Yeah. It shows up once in a while, but yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I like this Mickey. I wanted to see more of him, and this is the last. Well, almost the last we see of him. We'll see him again, briefly. But so the Doctor, of course, excoriates Torchwood for the stupidity of taking in the sphere, as he says. So you find the breach, you probe it, the sphere comes through 600 feet above London, bam, it leaves a hole in the fabric of reality, and that hole, you think, oh, shall we leave it alone? Shall we back off? Shall we play it safe? No, you think, let's make it bigger. I think that is a perfect description of like stupid science. I mean, this is one of the things that Doctor Who has excelled at over the years is exposing, like, just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should, even if you're a quote unquote smart scientist. Or maybe especially
they're ripping off Jurassic Park.
right. Just because you can do a thing, you shouldn't necessarily do it.
I like how Torchwood built a 600-foot skyscraper to get up to the level of where the hole in reality is.
Right. The myth of the all-powerful, all-competent, financially flush secret government agency, because in reality the government is so incompetent it would never get done. But which is all the best for us.
By the way, Canary Wharf is a real place in London.
Yep.
So for people in England, this is like saying some famous place in America
Times Square.
Really a Times Square is really a secret government installation.
Right. In fact, the scenes from Star Wars Rogue One were filmed at the Canary Wharf Metro, the Tube station, which is very fun, interesting.
So I think this is a redevelopment area. Yeah, yes. It was like in 1980 they started redeveloping it, so now it's a very popular part of London.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. So Rose uses the psychic paper to get into the sphere room, the void ship room, and I was kind of well, no, she uses it to get into on the lock. Like she holds it up to the lock and the door opens, and I'm thinking, no, it doesn't work on the people because the tortured people have been trained to be immune to its effects. But I'm thinking, how does psychic paper work on a lock for?
It's also got psychic RFID.
Yeah, it must be a psychic lock.
But you were going to say, Jimmy, it is nice that they're immune to it.
Yeah, she shows it to Rajesh, and he's like, everyone here at Torchwood has been given a basic level of psychic training, no dice.
Right. Yep. So the first episode ends with the Cybermen coming through, and the sphere opening and Daleks being inside, and that's sort of our ending, our cliffhanger. And so then we go to the next episode. Yep.
A couple little notes on the first episode before we hit the next.
Sure.
So when the Doctor first shows up at Torchwood, there's this big thing where all these soldiers pop out with guns. And the Doctor says, no, Rose notes the Doctor doesn't have one. And so he says, well, that makes me the better person, doesn't it? Right. And then he goes out, and Vanessa, sachets up and starts applauding him and like is so happy to see him. And everybody is so happy. Well, why did you just draw guns on him?
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's the TARDIS.
Yeah. Then we have this bit with Adiola, or if that's, I may be getting the name wrong, but Martha Jones is Freema's character in this episode.
Yep.
Where she is now under Cyberman control, but she's like totally clever and flirty with other employees, getting them off to where they can be cyberized too.
Right.
And it's like, I'm sorry, Cybermen mind-controlled people should not be clever and flirty.
Right.
Cybermen are not clever and flirty.
That's removed from them.
Controlling shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, from them when they're cyberized.
Throughout this episode, the Cybermen and the Daleks get clever and quippy and funny, which is funny. I mean, some of these lines, we'll talk about those in a second. I want to get to in a second, but you're right that they are a bit out of character in this. And the Daleks are explained because it's the Cult of Skaro.
Right.
So speaking of which,
these are alternate Cybermen, but still, they're not. None of them come across as clever and flirty. One last thing about this episode is there's a moment where Vanessa is she's canceled the most recent ghost shift, finally heeding the Doctor's advice, and that's when the cyber-controlled computer technicians start madly typing on their keyboards to flip the levers. Right. So the levers that open the ghost shift are moving because people are typing on computer keyboards. And it's like, if you control the ghost shift via keyboards, why do you even have the levers? I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, that also has implications for the huge, show-changing ending, which is if you could have controlled it with the computers, why does the Doctor and Rose even have to be in that room to almost get sucked through? They should have been somewhere else. That's a huge plot hole that they would be able to do that. So in Doomsday, we have the Cult of Skaro gets revealed. Is the Cult of Skaro something we knew about in Classic Who?
No, it's new.
So this is a brand new concept. Okay. And it's an interesting idea, and I think it sort of plays on some Cold War era stories that, for example, like the Soviets built America towns in remote places to kind of learn about being American from like acting like and living like Americans.
I think there was a 1980s movie with this plot as well, but kind of cheesy, but yeah. The idea too of spies, of those who integrated themselves into the culture and were so good at it that they didn't realize they were spies until too late.
Right.
Yeah. Although it doesn't always work. My wife was once telling me about some German spies who tried to infiltrate British society based on having read P.G. Wodehouse and thinking that Jeeves and Wooster is how you're supposed to act.
Chip cheerio.
that would have been amusing. So I think they were called. I think it was the Potemkin villages was what the fake portable. Well, originally,
not so sure about that.
Yeah, originally I'm just looking Wikipedia's entries. Originally they were fake portable villages built to impress Empress Catherine in 1787. But I think there were modern variations on that.
The concept of the cult of Skaro, though, is, I mean, it makes sense that you would have people, trying to think like the enemy. And that does explain some of the things like the Dalek humor in this. It's not the first time we've seen Daleks use humor. They famously used it back in a First Doctor serial called The Chase, but they also use it here. And there's this great moment with the Cybermen where the Cybermen point out that our two species are similar, right? Because they're both part mechanical, part organic. And the Cybermen suggest that they ally to upgrade and improve the universe. And of course, the Daleks, being xenophobes, are not into that.
Yep.
But the Cybermen are talking to them about how, the difference between them, despite their similarities, is that the Daleks' appearance is less elegant. And Dalek Sek says, Daleks have no concept of elegance. And the Cyberman says, this is obvious.
So a couple of great smack talks. The Dalek says, this is not war, this is pest control.
Yeah.
And then the Cybermen, we have 5 million Cybermen. How many are you? 4. You would destroy the Cybermen with 4 Daleks? We would destroy the Cybermen with 1 Dalek. Yeah. Which is sort of recalls to me, it's not exactly the same thing, but Molan Labe, the Spartans' response to bring it. We only need 1 Spartan to defeat your
Well, I love that line too about the Daleks say Cybermen are more efficient than Daleks in one thing. What's that? Dying.
Yeah. You are superior in only one respect. At one point, Mickey says something that's really politically incorrect today, but kind of funny at the time. Was like the Cybermen talking to the Daleks is like Stephen Hawking meets a speaking clock, which was kind of funny. Totally politically incorrect, but
I have to say though, the second episode is most diehard fans' geek dream come to screen.
Yep.
I mean, it really is. How many geeks have fantasized what it would look like if the Cybermen and the Daleks fought?
Right. The two of the greatest enemies of the Doctor encounter each other and go to war with each other. With humans actually on the side of the Cybermen at one point, right? I mean, we see this the preachers, what they call themselves, the warriors that came through the breach from Pete Tyler's Earth, shooting Daleks side by side with Cybermen. It's sort of interesting to see. So what we also find out, let's see, that the Dalek plan to survive the Time War was the Genesis Arc, which is, that we're told, Time Lord technology, but the Doctor's not at all familiar with it. He doesn't know what it is.
Yep.
And
so he's never seen it before.
Right. And the only way for it to be opened, now, when we see it, it has vaguely the shape of a Dalek. I mean, it obviously looks like that vague shape. And the only way the Daleks manipulate it in certain ways, but they can't finally open it unless they have someone who's traveled in a TARDIS because they carry that background time radiation, and they have to touch it, just like Rose did in the first season episode Dalek when she restored the Dalek there by touching it. We find out eventually that it's actually a prison ship with millions of Daleks inside. That the Time Lord technology is that it's bigger on the inside.
It's an ARDIS.
It is
not
a TARDIS. Yeah. It's
not
just
a prison
TARDIS.
Well, it's not a TARDIS. It's just an ARDIS. Relative dimensions in space. It doesn't have time travel. At least they don't express that it had time travel capability.
Right.
It was just bigger on the inside.
I would assume it did if you have to be a time traveler to open it. But not necessarily.
Yeah, I mean that we could assume that maybe it originated at the end of time when the Time War was occurring, or I mean there's all kinds of things. But you're right. Yeah. I mean it's at least relative dimensions in space.
Yeah, and this is basically TARDIS technology being applied to prison transport.
Exactly,
and that also can explain why the Doctor doesn't recognize it, because if it's a TARDIS, it's got a chameleon circuit, and so it can look like anything.
Right. So
they have chameleon circuits? Might want to tell the Doctor's TARDIS that.
Yeah, maybe we can salvage it. So meanwhile, the Doctor gets transported back to Pete Tyler's world. We keep calling it that, the parallel Torchwood, which looks like it was destroyed. And they want him, now that the Cybermen are gone off to the other Earth, he wants the Doctor to close the breach because it's damaging that Earth. The temperature is rising in that Earth because of the breach. They know for certain. And the Doctor's like, no, if I do that, I'm stuck here, and all of the Cybermen and Daleks are over there destroying that Earth. And by the way, Jackie and Rose are over there. And he convinces Pete that, hey, they're not technically your Jackie and certainly not your daughter in that sense, but you're connected to them, and so they go back. And Pete says this is that moment when the Pete kind of says to the Doctor, you need to close the breach, and the Doctor's like, what? Close the breach? Stop the Cybermen? Defeat the Daleks? Do you believe I can do that? And Pete says yes, and the Doctor says, well, maybe that's all I need. Off we go then. And I mean, this is this is that less arrogant Doctor, like, you think I can do that? Okay, let's give it a shot.
But they kind of ruin it when you've got Rose. The Daleks have just boasted, we'll kill 5 million Cybermen with one Dalek, and then they see the Doctor on the screen, and Rose says, that's the Doctor, and of course the Dalek immediately backs up. Right. It's like, 5 million Cybermen, you're not afraid, but one Doctor, now you're afraid. They do
undermine it, yeah. The Doctor does tell the Daleks that he survived the Time War by fighting on the front lines of Arcadia, which we then see in the Day of the Doctor.
Yeah.
And in fact, the 10th Doctor is actually present at that battle because of the events of the Day of the Doctor.
Yep. Although what he means here is that he was there at the fall of Arcadia in a prior regeneration.
Yep.
Right.
Which later is established as the War Doctor.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Then we have that meeting between Jackie and Pete Tyler, who saves her life from the Cybermen. And and she's like, how can it be you? And the Doctor starts over explaining it, and Jackie says, oh, you just shut up. And it's like, oh, okay, you're right.
I can do that.
And then Jackie and Pete get this scene, and even though they're not from the same world, they've both lost the other one.
Yeah.
Parallel Jackie died, our Pete died, and there's this bond. So there's this bond between them emotionally, and they start exploring that. And it ends with Pete just rushing up and hugging Jackie, despite the fact she's not his Jackie. And as someone who's lost a spouse, that really rang true for me. I mean, if I met my wife from a parallel dimension, it would play out something like this.
Right. Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's the metaphysical question: is it the same person? But despite that, they are alike in personality, in look, and in all the ways that really matter to us as individuals. In this plane of existence. So there is this one moment where they can't help but kind of mock Jackie Davies does. At one point, she's, Pete asked her, did you ever remarry? She says, no, there was never anyone else. And the Doctor and Mickey kind of look at each other and smirk. Because, of course, Jackie famously has had a parade of boyfriends through the things. But
it's defensible in that there was no one else I cared about enough to marry.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's true. Then we have the Doctor this whole time is running around with what becomes sort of iconic, his old-fashioned 3D glasses that are blue and red on opposite eyes. We don't know why he keeps doing this, and then until finally at the end he says he's seeing the background radiation from it's void stuff, which if it's a void, is there stuff?
Does it have stuff in it?
Exactly. Yeah. But so all right, let's put a pin in that one too.
Pay no attention to the plot hole.
Yeah. High plot hole as it goes by.
And semi-defensible. I mean, outer space is broadly considered a void, but it does have a very thin diffusion of gas in it.
Yeah, but the Doctor had been very clear that the void is nothing.
Yeah, right. Well, if it's not, if it's absolutely nothing, it's not there.
Exactly.
Yeah, but isn't this like the whole quantum issue where the late Stephen Hawking, kind of stepped into it. He said, well, you Christians came from nothing. Well, we believe that. Just the nothing happened to have a quantum flux.
Right.
And we're saying, no.
That's not nothing. Yeah.
That's something.
So then we get to see Chekhov's anti-grav lifters, which are
totally superfluous in this episode.
Right. So in the first episode, Vanessa makes a point of pointing out this technology of these devices that allow you to lift up any weight, by hand. It removes the mass from anything.
And following the Chekhov's gun rule, they then have to be used later in the same story.
Right, exactly. And so the Doctor eventually uses it along with Rose to hold on as the breach tries to suck them back into the void.
And that's just totally useless because all you needed was a handle on the wall.
Right.
You don't need some anti-gravity thing removing the mass from the walls to just hang on.
Well, right. I mean, in fact, the weak point is not the handle; it's the wall. So if the thing is, I mean, if we have a properly installed handle, it's going to stay in the wall. That's just, that was like you said, superfluous. While
we're talking about that moment, and the moment we're talking about is where the Doctor and Rose have opened the portal to the void, I guess, and all of the Daleks and Cybermen are being sucked through it because they've all got void stuff on them.
Presumably from all over the planet.
Yeah, explicitly from all over the planet.
Yeah.
And so they're flying at tremendous speeds through this narrow little window that they don't even damage.
Right.
Which is unbelievable. But I did like an aspect of this solution, which is it's not a critical failure point solution. So many times in fiction, including Doctor Who, where we've built up the problem to some huge scale, the solution is, well, you've just got to kill the Queen Dalek or the Queen Cyberman or the Queen Bee, and everyone else in the collective will die.
Right.
And you're not dealing with the individual opponents one by one. And I hate that cliched trope. And here they avoid it.
Right.
Because each one of the Daleks and Cybermen has to get individually sucked out into this void. There's not just a central one that you can disable and it kills the rest.
Right, right. And in fact, we have a moment where Dalek the Black, I think he calls
Dalek Sec.
Yeah, is he notices what's going on and then declares time shift and disappears. Which is that him going to Manhattan? The Daleks take Manhattan, or is that? That's too far
eventually.
Yeah,
he ends up there eventually.
Yeah, and even though only he is shown escaping in this episode, we later learn the rest of the Cult of Skaro has as well.
Okay. So we did mention that the Genesis Ark was a prison ship that holding millions of Daleks. So apparently the Time Lords have enough, even during the middle of the Time War, have enough morality left to not kill all the Daleks that they capture, I guess.
Might be from an early stage in the Time War.
Right. So when we get to this moment of the breach, we have a bunch of stuff happens. Everyone who's been through the breach has to be on the other, has to be in Pete Tyler's world to avoid getting sucked into the void. And so that includes that includes Rose. Jackie's going to go just because so she doesn't get separated from Rose, but Rose doesn't want to go. And so we have this sort of back and forth where they trick Rose over there. She gets over there, gets mad, punches the button, comes back, and now she's going to stay with the Doctor. And she's going to abandon her mother. That relationship she's committed to the Doctor now. And then in the process of the breach being closed, she has to heroically, let go of the handle to put the lever back in position, and
instead of using a computer console.
Instead of using the computer, mm-hmm. Right. And then ends up losing her grip and is about to get sucked into hell, the void, the howling, with all the Daleks and Cybermen. When Pete Tyler emerges, catches her, and brings her back
to his world.
I'm not sure how he knew to do that at that point, but he
mm-hmm.
did. I'm not sure why he doesn't get sucked in too, since he's standing on the edge of the breach.
She had blinked out from his world to come help the Doctor.
Right.
So I assume it's just fortunate coincidence he grabs her at this moment, but he was coming back to retrieve her,
I guess.
And then he just blinks out again quickly before the two of them can be sucked in.
Right. Okay. I mean, but it's a huge coincidence, of course.
Yeah.
And then we have a very long moment. It was almost uncomfortably long of the Doctor on one side of the wall and Rose crying, her makeup streaming down her face on the other side of the wall, and this back and forth. And I'm like, this is a very long, like nothing really happening, but the music and swelling.
I didn't mind it, and I thought it called back to something they did at the very beginning of Army of Ghosts, where the Doctor talked about how people's want for the ghost to be one of their loved ones established a bridge across the dimensions that the Cybermen were exploiting. And to me, I that's what I read is going on here. The Doctor and Rose's want for each other was bridging them across the dimensions.
Okay. All right. That's romantic and sci-fi enough to satisfy me, I guess. I'll retcon that. So in the process, but there was a few other things that happened. The Doctor when he thought Rose was going to be stuck on the other world, he was very nonchalant about it. Just sort of like, and was he putting up a brave face? Perhaps.
I think he was also, because he was expecting to die and be sucked into the void himself.
Right.
And so he was okay with Rose being in the other world because that way at least she would be safe. So it's like, I'm going to die, but she's going to be safe. I'm okay with that.
Okay. I'm not sure why he didn't just get another person, say from Torchwood, who had never been to the void to operate the levers, but
maybe from a keyboard.
So Vanessa, the head of Torchwood, got cyberized, but was able to overcome her programming.
Yeah,
and
she gets some redemption.
I feel like she's like a precursor to Cyber Danny. Because, at the moment of cyberization, she was, I will do my duty to God and country or Queen and country, or I forget what the exact line was. Yep. And was able to overcome the cyber programming.
She's also a precursor to Cyber Bill.
Yep. And Cyber Bill, that's right. Right. This seems to be a trend that certain people can overcome the cyber programming. And Cyber Brigadier. Don't forget.
Right. Yeah. And so I like, even though she was a very unsympathetic character, she went kind of on a negative character arc. When we first meet her, we don't yet know that she's bad, but then she gets worse despite how charming she is.
Yep.
And she's really presented very unsympathetically. And then she goes, because of her own folly, she ends up going to her death, declaring that she had done her duty for Queen and country, even though she's horrified at what's about to happen to her. And then she redeems herself by overcoming the cyber programming and killing other Cybermen.
So, quick question. All the people who were made Cybermen after the Cybermen came through had not traveled through the void. So what happened to them?
Well, that would be an interesting question, wouldn't it?
I'm going to have to assume, for my own retcon, the suits came through the void.
Yeah, they had to have the parts because they didn't have time to set up any manufacturing centers.
Yeah.
So they would have had to have the cyber parts.
All that stuff would have been sucked through then with the people inside it, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, but the poor people who, a cultural reference, pop culture reference in the show, that the Doctor and Rose are, as they're getting ready, they kind of like Mutt and Jeff, something else, and like shiver and shake. And then this, which of us is shiver and which is shake? And the Doctor says he's shake. So this is a reference to a weekly comic magazine in Britain in 1973 and 74. It was very short-lived, got absorbed into another intellectual property, continued on a little bit after that. And Shiver was a ghost, and Shake was an elephant. And it's kind of interesting because if Rose is Shiver, she's the ghost, which is somewhat apropos since she's dead. In
quote
this
unquote.
Yeah, quote unquote in this episode. I did the air quotes on podcasting. It's a bad thing. I shouldn't do the air quotes.
Also, I think the Doctor assumes the role of Shake because Shiver is more explicitly fearful, and that's consistent with the role of a companion rather than the Doctor.
Right.
He has more native bravado, although Shake itself can signify fear.
Yes. Yep. And so we have this interlude at the end where we now have Rose and Jackie and Mickey and Pete living this nice domestic situation on the other side. It's 3 months later. Rose has this dream in the middle of the night. We have this voiceover narration.
Rosebud.
Rose. Yeah, exactly.
Rosebud Wolf. And then she gets this calling, and they hop in Pete's old Jeep, and they drive
to Norway.
Over
the English Channel, I guess.
Yeah,
or maybe under it.
Darlig Ulfstranden, which is outside of Bergen, and which translates as Bad Wolf Bay. And that's where there's a little bit of the breach left, a tiny bit, and that's where she gets called to go. The Doctor doesn't actually choose it. It's coincidence of some sort. The universe having some fun there. I like the fact that when she tells him where she is, she says Darlig Ulfstranden, and he says Dalek, and she corrects it, which is fun because I think in that instance, I think the writers, Davies knows, if they just say Darlig Ulfstranden, that a lot of viewers will think Dalek, and so they fix that right then and there.
Yep. And that's smart, although it does pop the hardcore fan out of the story saying, wait a minute, shouldn't Norwegian be translated by the TARDIS translation circuit?
Right. Maybe the TARDIS knows not to translate place names. Because it knows it's capitalized. And so the
Doctor not going to translate every noun in German then.
Exactly. The TARDIS doesn't do German. So the Doctor is communicating across the very tiniest bit of the breach that's left, that's closing. And he says he's burning up a sun just to say goodbye, which is romantic. As long as nobody's around the sun. And he's projecting an image of himself to this beach to talk to Rose, and she wants to, touch. And he says, I'm still just an image, no touch, which is ironic given how he was earlier mocking the Daleks for being unable to touch anyone their whole lives, being locked inside their casing. And in some ways, I mean, we get this several times in New Who, and I don't know if it's in Classic Who, this sense of the Dalek saying, the Doctor, you make a good Dalek. The Doctor, you're more like us than you think. And because he's isolated, he's alone, ultimately, always. And this is sort of that idea. As we said earlier, Rose is, reveals that she's working for Torchwood. There's an interesting moment where she's talks about there's a baby on the way, and the Doctor's like, is it yours? It's like, as if there's some
Mickey get together.
Yeah, exactly. With a little bit of jealousy, and no, it's Jackie, and Rose tells him that she loves him, and then Tyler is about to make some big pronouncement, and then the breach closes. We are told by people in the production later on to kind of to quell the fans, yes, he was going to say it. He was going to tell her he loves her.
We didn't need to be told that, though. It was obvious.
No, exactly.
Right.
I actually didn't like the dialogue at this point, because she tells the doctor she loves him, and he says, quite right, and which is arrogant. Yeah. And then he drags it out and says, well, if it's not too late to say it, Rose Tyler, and that's when it fades out. And it's like, you idiot, just say I love you too. Or at least do Harrison Ford and say I know.
That would have been good. Well, I mean, they spend a lot of time in this. They've only got 2 minutes. They spend a lot of time talking like inconsequential things, like get to the point. Get to the point. And so we come back to the doctor in tears, in the console room on the TARDIS, and he dries his tears. He's about to take off. He turns around, and
comedian Catherine Tate is there in a wedding dress.
Yeah. And so the doctor says, "What?" And she says, "Oh." He says, "What?" She says, "Who are you?" He says, "But," and she says, "Where am I, eh?" And he says, "What?" Like back and forth. And then we cliffhanger to the Christmas special, which is coming up, The Runaway Bride. Apparently they'd kept this scene very secret, and to the point of they had the minimum number of crew members necessary to film it on the set. They
filmed it during the wrap party for the rest of the cast.
Right. So they kept this pretty well secret, which is, and again, it's Donna Noble. A lot of people really like the Dr. Donna season. I do. I think, and first, partly because it breaks the doctor as my boyfriend dynamic that we often get, but also because Donna is just so funny, and their interactions are great. There's such great chemistry between David Tennant and Catherine Tate. Yeah.
And so this would have come, and because she's a celebrity in England already, so this was stunt casting,
right?
And having her, this known figure, suddenly pop up at the season finale, right at the end of the tearful farewell to Rose, tells the audience, we're going in a comedic direction next, so don't be sad.
Right.
Or don't be too sad.
Yes. Yeah. So a couple of further notes about this episode. When this aired, so in July of 2006, that was the World Cup was going on then, as it is going on now as we record this, and they used the Cybermen. Yes, apparently.
Okay.
They So, side note: seismologists recorded a small earthquake in Mexico the other day when Mexico upset Germany in the Cup. They literally recorded a small earthquake. So yes, the Cup is ongoing, and the BBC used the Cybermen versus Daleks on a soccer pitch in the marketing part, which I thought was funny. So so the music that plays after Rose is sealed off in Pete's universe is the same music we hear the first time that the Ninth Doctor shows Rose the TARDIS in the episode Rose. So there's that use of music that they do so well. Couple of funny little trivia bits. It's the only finale in New Who written by Davies that features the 10th Doctor, but not Captain Jack.
Man, that's good.
That's good. So Parting of the Ways, Last of the Time Lords, Journey's End, and the End of Time. Because, of course, Parting of the Ways is when we first get introduced to the 10th. Army of Ghosts and Doomsday is the only multi-part series finale written by Davies not to feature a regeneration scene. So
that's good too.
Yeah, one of those was the regeneration of the Master. So kind of. So.
By the way, we got Mr. Saxon. Or no, that may be Runaway Bride, where we get the next Mr. Saxon reference.
Yeah, Harold Saxon. Yeah. We did learn that in the alternate universe that.
Harriet Jones, Prime Minister.
Yes. President, and has created a golden age for Britain. So
I love that. You keep an eye on her.
Yeah. So those are my notes. Do you guys have any last notes about this episode?
I had a few little ones. Early on in Doomsday, the Daleks animate their suckers and put them on the head of Rajesh to suck info out of his brains.
Yep.
And I liked the animation of the suckers because otherwise, I mean, they look like toilet plungers.
Right.
And finding something useful to do with them is always good. Sucking his brain of information, though, which then kills him in the process, raises a question of why can't they do the same thing to Rose and Mickey? Because Rose and Mickey have just bargained for their lives on the grounds that they know about the Time War. And so if you can just suck information out of someone's head, why not just do that to them?
Well,
they then
I have an answer to that.
Then emerge. Well, I know. Yeah. I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
It then emerges that they need Rose or Mickey as time travelers to open the Genesis Ark.
Right.
And then when the Doctor shows up, they're wanting him to open the Genesis Ark. And I'm thinking, well, why can't, if it's just this time energy that's needed to open the Ark, why not just kill the Doctor and put his hand on it? And I think the answer must be, this is a security device. It's like biometric scanning for a time traveler to open this thing. Mm-hmm. And so you need someone who both has the time energy and is alive. Right. But why they also don't need to be a prison guard, I don't know. So it leaves some other questions.
My iPhone is more secure than that.
Well, yeah. There's also a moment where, which I thought was just totally implausible, where the Cybermen have just given orders to take the Doctor and Jackie and Vanessa and cyberize them. And they're panicking. And then the cyber leader says, except that one, pointing to the Doctor, his sudden increased adrenaline suggests he has vital information about the Daleks. And I'm like, all of them have sudden increased adrenaline. You just threatened to cyberize them. Then they're panicking.
Right. I mean, if anything, the Doctor has less adrenaline because he knows he can get out of it because he's the Doctor. Yeah. So, one of the reasons I was thinking about why they kept both Rose and Mickey alive was leverage. So they knew if they needed one of the living time travelers to put their hand on it, they used the other one, the threat to the life of the other one, as leverage to get them to do it. But, so that's what I was thinking why. And the whole time Mickey had that device, so he could escape at any minute, but didn't because he wanted to be able to save Rose and fulfill his mission, whatever that was. So power to Mickey on that one. Anything else?
That's all I've got.
Okay, so I guess that's it from us. We've talked about these two episodes pretty well, but if
spread the word,
yeah. Well, yes. If you like what you hear, please let other people know about this podcast. Share it on social media. Write a review on iTunes. I can't tell you how important it is for podcasts to get even very short, like 5-star reviews on iTunes, because it really exposes the podcast to other people. I mean, it is really important. That's why every podcaster asks you to do it. So if you enjoy this, we'd appreciate it. But please also share this on social media and let other people know about our podcast and this particular episode if you liked it. But also, we want to know what you thought of this 10th Doctor, 2-parter, season finale, last dance of Rose Tyler, Army of Ghosts, and Doomsday. So visit us at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page and leave some feedback on this particular episode. Or send us an email to doctorwho@sqpn.com. You can find links to all our personal social media and websites and other show notes on sqpn.com. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 4th Doctor story, the Tom Baker era story, The Ark in Space. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Doctor Who.
Hey, glad to be here, and thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening. And remember, why does the Doctor always have to reduce it to science? Why can't it just be real?
When will I see you again?
Soon, I expect. Or later. One of those.